My name is Natalie Ann Keaton, and I'm 26 years old. If you really want to understand how everything in my life unraveled, and how a single photograph changed everything, you have to start with the house where genetics were treated like a scoreboard, and I was the only one who didn't belong on the team. I was 10 when Dad married Teresa Colburn, a woman who believed pedigree was personality and intelligence was hereditary. Her twins, Ethan and Madison, were golden from birth. Gifted programs, music lessons, private coaches, their achievements glittered like medals she could wear. Mine didn't even make the fridge. At every dinner, Teresa had a favorite line. Some kids are born with that spark, you know? It's in their DNA. She'd tap her temple when she said DNA, like she was the gatekeeper of genius. Dad would smile weakly, his fork frozen midair, never once telling her to stop. By 8th grade, the comparisons had turned cruel. Ethan's robotics team is going to nationals. Madison's been invited to perform at Carnegie Hall. Then Teresa would look at me. Same thin smile, same polished voice. And what about you, Natalie? I'd mumble something like, I got an A- on my essay. She'd tilt her head, the way you look at a cat that brought you the wrong dead thing. That's nice. At least you're trying. Dad would give my hand a quick squeeze under the table. It was his silent way of saying sorry for not stopping her. But apologies without action just collect dust. I first saw the manila envelope when I was cleaning his office for chore money. It was tucked in the top drawer, edges worn soft, a corner of an old photograph peeking out. When I asked about it, Dad closed the drawer gently but firmly. Work stuff, he said. Nothing important. But the look on his face said otherwise. High school was survival by invisibility. Teresa had a talent for making small cuts feel like love. She said she didn't want to pressure me, so while Ethan got private robotics tutoring and Madison got a new violin, my educational funds went toward their travel expenses. You're happier without stress, she'd insist. Dad never disagreed, so I stopped asking, and I started plotting quietly. During junior year, I applied, behind everyone's back, to the state's most prestigious STEM summer intensive, the one that only accepted 50 students a year. I filled out the forms at the library using a school computer, erasing every trace when I was done. When the acceptance letter arrived, I hid it behind my bookshelf under an old paperback copy of the Martian Chronicles. For 2 weeks, it was my secret oxygen until Teresa found it. She burst into my room one evening, holding the letter like it was evidence of a crime. This is embarrassing, Natalie. Competing with kids like Ethan and Madison, they're miles ahead. Why set yourself up to fail? We were at dinner again, her voice sugar-coated but venomous underneath. Ethan froze. Madison looked away. Dad said nothing. I got in on merit, I said quietly. Teresa laughed, sharp, dismissive. Sweetheart, those programs are for kids who need extra help. My children don't need that kind of handout. That was it. The click, the silent snap. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just decided to go anyway. That summer, I left without her blessing and spent 8 grueling weeks in a lab that smelled like solder and ambition. Every time I wanted to quit, I pictured Teresa tapping her temple. Every experiment that failed made me hungrier to succeed. Every success felt like a rebellion. In the end, I won first place statewide. The prize, a $250,000 scholarship to a top-tier technology university. The local paper ran my photo under the headline, Local Teen Wins Major STEM Competition. When I got home, Teresa was waiting in the kitchen. She smiled for the photo Dad insisted on taking, teeth bright and jaw tight. How wonderful, she said through a clenched grin. Of course, if Ethan had entered, he probably would have won too. Dad poured her another glass of wine. He didn't meet my eyes. At school, people stared, whispered. She's the one from the paper. Adam Jensen, my best friend since freshman year, caught me by my locker. You did it, he said, eyes bright. I knew you would. I smiled. Guess the DNA thing's not holding me back. He laughed and kissed my forehead, quick and soft. It was the first time anyone had looked at me like I wasn't the runner-up. From across the hallway, Lauren Peters, his ex-girlfriend, watched with that kind of half-smirk people wear when they're pretending not to care. Later, I'd hear she told someone I must have had connections. I didn't bother defending myself. The truth didn't need her permission to exist. 2 weeks before graduation, Dad knocked on my door. He looked like he hadn't slept in days, eyes rimmed red, shoulders sagging. In his hands, the manila envelope, the same one from his desk drawer. "Can we talk?" he asked. He sat beside me, turning the envelope like he was afraid of what was inside. I should have told you this a long time ago. When he finally opened it, my world changed. Inside was a photograph of a woman in a white lab coat, standing in front of a wall of patents and plaques. She was smiling, not politely, but with the kind of confidence that doesn't ask for permission. Her eyes were the same hazel as mine. Dad's voice broke. "This is your mother," he said. "Dr. Evelyn Moore Keaton." The name hit me like a chord I'd known by ear my whole life, but was hearing clearly for the first time. Downstairs, the dishwasher hummed. Madison practiced her violin. Teresa's laughter drifted from the living room, bright and brittle. And for the first time, I understood exactly what had been missing from every story I'd been told about myself. When Dad said her name, Dr. Evelyn Moore Keaton, something in me clicked into place, like a puzzle that had been waiting for the right corner piece. He laid out the rest of the envelope's contents on my bed: patents, research papers, and an old university brochure. Across the top, in faded serif letters, the Keaton Research Fellowship, founded by Dr. Evelyn M. Keaton. My breath caught. That was the same STEM program I had just attended, the one I'd fought for, bled for, won. "She founded it?" I whispered. Dad nodded, his eyes wet. "Your mother built that program 20 years ago. She wanted it to find gifted kids from ordinary places, students who might never get noticed otherwise." His voice broke. "She built it for kids like you." I didn't know whether to laugh or scream. All those years, Teresa told me I didn't belong, that I wasn't built for pressure, and I'd just conquered the program my mother had created. Downstairs, I could hear her laughing on the phone, her voice dripping with sugar. "Yes, Madison's concert was amazing. Oh, Natalie, she's doing something sciencey this summer, for kids who need a little help, you know?" I pressed my palm against the bedspread, breathing through the ache. Dad hesitated. "She doesn't know," he said quietly. "I never told her about your mother's legacy. She wouldn't have handled it well." That was the understatement of the century. 2 days later, the local paper called to confirm details for their feature on the scholarship. "We'd love a family photo," the reporter said. "The Keaton connection is quite something." I hadn't told Teresa yet, but fate beat me to it. She saw the draft of the article online before I could even breathe. At dinner that night, she walked in holding her tablet like a loaded weapon. "Did you know about this?" she demanded, waving the screen at Dad. The headline read, "Natalie Keaton wins State STEM Fellowship, following in her mother's footsteps." "Your mother's footsteps," she repeated, her tone sharp enough to slice air. "Your real mother, apparently." Ethan and Madison froze. Dad's knuckles went white around his glass. "Why didn't you tell me?" she hissed. "Do you know how this makes me look? I've been bragging to everyone about helping you find your path, and now it turns out you're some charity case living off your dead mother's reputation?" I stood up so fast my chair screeched. "It's not charity, Teresa. It's merit. I earned that scholarship." She laughed, brittle, mirthless. "Oh, please. You think you got in on talent? You probably got in because of her name." "Maybe," I said, voice shaking, "but I finished first. No last names on the tests, no family trees on the equations, just me." Dad said softly, "Teresa, that's enough." But she cut him off. "No. What's enough is this constant martyr act. I've done everything for this family, and this is how I'm repaid? Humiliated by a headline?" For the first time, Dad didn't flinch. "You've done everything for your image, not this family." The silence that followed was the kind that makes your heart trip over itself. Teresa's lip trembled, not with sadness, but rage. "You're both ungrateful," she spat. Then softer, poisonous. "You're not even mine, Natalie. Remember that." She stormed out, heels cracking against the floor, the front door slamming like punctuation. Ethan stared at his plate. Madison wiped her eyes silently. Dad just whispered, "I'm sorry," over and over, like it could undo years of cowardice. That night, I sat on my bed, the photo of my mother glowing faintly in the lamplight. For the first time, her eyes didn't feel like a mystery. They felt like mine. The next morning, the university called. They wanted to invite me to a press conference to celebrate the daughter of Dr. Evelyn Keaton continuing her mother's vision. I said yes. At the event, cameras flashed, microphones crowded. A dean shook my hand, smiling for the press. "Your mother changed the field, Natalie," he said warmly. "Seems brilliance runs in the family." I smiled politely, but the words landed heavy. If brilliance was in my blood, why had everyone spent my whole life trying to convince me it wasn't? When the photos went online, Teresa's colleagues started congratulating her. "Your stepdaughter's incredible," one of them gushed on social media. Another comment, "You must be so proud of her, following in Evelyn's footsteps." Her silence was deafening. She avoided me for 2 days. Then one evening, I came home from school to find her waiting in the kitchen, face pale and cold. "Don't think this changes anything," she said softly. "You're still not really one of us." I met her gaze, calm, steady. "You're right," I said. "I'm not. And that's the best thing about me." She blinked, thrown. For once, she had no comeback. That night, Dad knocked on my door again. His hands were shaking. Another envelope clutched tightly between them. Older, yellowed, sealed with tape that had gone brittle. "I need to tell you something," he said. "About what happened when your mother died. About what I did, and what Teresa made me hide." Outside, thunder rolled across the sky like the world itself was bracing for what was coming. Dad sat on the edge of my bed, the stormlight flickering through the blinds. The envelope in his hands looked like it had been through a war, the paper soft, the edges frayed, my mother's handwriting faint but alive. "She died in a lab accident," he began quietly. 15 years ago. You were barely 5. I couldn't handle it. Teresa worked in HR at the university back then. She helped with the memorial arrangements. She took care of you when I couldn't even stand up." His voice cracked. "And somewhere along the way, I let her rewrite everything." He opened the envelope with trembling fingers. Inside were letters, certificates, patents, and a single page with my mother's signature at the bottom. Dr. Evelyn Moore Keaton, founder, the Keaton Research Fellowship. I'd seen that signature before, printed on the certificate I'd received at the STEM program's closing ceremony. The memory hit like lightning. I had held a piece of her legacy without even knowing it. Dad's eyes filled with tears. "Teresa hated the reminders. Every time you asked about your mother, she'd spiral. Said it was unhealthy, that you needed normalcy. I convinced myself she was right. I thought I was protecting you." I whispered, "By erasing her?" He winced. "By surviving." The word hung in the air, heavy and insufficient. Then footsteps. Quick, angry. Teresa stood in the doorway, one hand gripping her phone, the other clenched tight. "The university just called," she snapped. "They want to do a feature on you, about your mother's program, your scholarship, all of it." Her voice dripped venom. "They called her a pioneer." "She was," I said softly. Teresa's eyes blazed. "She was a fraud. Everyone knew it. She stole credit for other people's work. I saw the emails. I worked in that department, remember?" "Then show me," I said. "Show me the proof." Her mouth opened, then closed. "I don't have to prove anything." "You do," I said, standing up. "Because I'm going to ask the university to open their archives. Every patent, every review, every letter of collaboration. If you're right, it'll be there. But if you're lying, everyone will know." Dad stepped between us, voice shaking. "Teresa, stop." She laughed bitterly. "You think you can turn this around? You let me raise her. You let me fix what was broken." "You didn't fix anything," I said. "You buried it." The air crackled with something feral. Years of swallowed words clawing their way up. Teresa's face went pale. "You wouldn't dare humiliate this family." "I'm not the one who's been lying for 15 years, I said. "That's all you." The silence stretched so long I could hear the rain hitting the windows in slow rhythm. Then her voice broke. "I just wanted my kids to shine. You were this constant reminder that no matter what I did, I'd never measure up." I felt nothing, not anger, not pity, just the cold clarity of understanding. "You could have built your own light," I said. "Instead, you tried to dim mine." Dad's voice was hoarse. "Get out, Teresa." She turned, stunned. "What?" "Get out," he repeated, firmer now. "You don't talk to my daughter that way. Not ever again." It was the first time in my entire life he had chosen me over her. Teresa's heels clicked furiously across the floor. The front door slammed, followed by the sound of the rain swallowing her car's taillights. The house went still. Dad sank into the chair beside my desk, staring at the floor. "I should have done that years ago." "Yeah," I said quietly. "You should have." Down the hall, I heard muffled sobs. Ethan and Madison were sitting on the stairs, their faces pale. "Is it true?" Madison whispered. "About your mom?" "Yes." Ethan swallowed hard. "Mom told us you weren't as smart, that you didn't like school, that you were different." "I know," I said softly. "We're sorry," Madison said. "We believed her." I nodded. So did I. They looked small, lost. 2 kids who'd been raised in the orbit of someone else's insecurity. Madison's voice cracked. "Can we still be family, even after this?" I hesitated. Then I really looked at them. They weren't her. They were victims too, just in a different way. Yeah, I said finally, we can. For the first time, their smiles looked real. That night, Dad knocked on my door again, his voice trembling. She's gone. For good. I told her the marriage is over. He handed me another item from the envelope, a smaller, sealed letter with my name written in my mother's looping handwriting. She wrote this for you, he said, the week before she died. The paper was fragile. The ink faded. My name, Natalie, curved across the front like a whisper. I ran my fingers over it, not ready yet to break the seal. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the rain clouds. For the first time, the house didn't feel like a battlefield. Dad brewed coffee in the kitchen, quiet and careful, as if afraid to disturb the peace. Madison hummed softly while packing for school. Ethan sat at the table reading about renewable energy projects, something I'd never seen him do before. I took my mother's letter upstairs, held it against my chest, and whispered to the empty room. I'll read you when I'm ready. The photo of her on my desk caught the morning light. For once, she wasn't a ghost. She was a beginning. For the first time in years, the house was quiet. Not the tense kind of quiet that feels like a fuse waiting to blow. A different kind. Lighter, fragile. Teresa moved out 2 days after the fight. No goodbyes, no explanations. Just the sound of her car pulling away before sunrise and the faint scent of her perfume still clinging to the hallway. Dad didn't talk much that week. He moved like a man rebuilding muscle memory for parenting. He started making breakfast again, the way he used to when Mom was alive. Scrambled eggs, toast slightly burned, too much salt. I didn't correct him. It was progress. Then the university feature went live. The headline read, Natalie Keaton follows in her mother's footsteps, a legacy reborn. They used a side-by-side photo, me in a lab coat holding a microcontroller board, and Mom in her old research photo, the same one from the envelope. The resemblance was uncanny. Within hours, it was everywhere. News sites, social media, faculty newsletters. The comments were endless. Like mother, like daughter. What an incredible story. Her mom would be proud. The attention should have felt validating. It didn't. It felt dangerous. Because within a day, the phone started ringing again. First, the local news station wanted an interview. Then a regional science podcast. Then the scholarship committee asked if they could quote me for their campaign. And then the message I didn't expect. Teresa. Her name lit up my screen like a warning flare. I didn't answer. But that didn't stop her. By the next week, she'd gone public. Her own story. Her own version of the truth. A Facebook post. Long, carefully written. As Natalie's stepmother, I always supported her education, despite difficult family dynamics. It's disheartening to see my years of dedication erased from the narrative. I only ever wanted what was best for her. The comments split in half. Some defended me. Others sided with her. And then came the article from a local tabloid. Family rift behind rising STEM star. Sources say stepmother feels betrayed. I didn't need to read the whole thing. The quotes told me enough. She's exploiting her mother's tragedy for attention. She wasn't mistreated. She was jealous. She only got into the program because of connections. I sat on my bed, scrolling through the noise, heart pounding in my throat. That's when Adam called. Don't read the comments, he said. I already did. Then stop. You don't have to justify yourself to people who weren't there. She's trying to ruin me. He was quiet for a beat. She can't ruin what's true. But truth, I was starting to realize, wasn't bulletproof. The next day, a letter arrived, hand-delivered, heavy cream paper, embossed logo at the top. A lawsuit notice. Teresa Colburn versus Natalie Keaton. Defamation, emotional distress, reputational damage. I stared at the words until they blurred. Dad read it twice, then slammed his fist against the table. She's lost her mind. Ethan and Madison stood in the doorway, pale. She can't do this, Madison whispered. She already has, I said quietly. We sat there, the four of us, surrounded by old truths and new paperwork. Then Ethan spoke up. I'll testify, Madison too. We'll tell them what she said about you, how she treated you. I looked at them, surprised. You don't have to. We want to, Madison interrupted. It's time someone told the truth. Dad rubbed his temples. She's got money saved. She'll use it to drag this out. Then we fight, I said. Not to win money, to end this. I called a lawyer the next morning. Her name was Rachel Monroe, calm and sharp-eyed, the kind of woman who looked like she'd been built from strategy itself. We'll need evidence, she said. Emails, messages, anything showing a pattern of mistreatment. Dad swallowed. I have that. He disappeared into his office, came back with a flash drive. Every email, every budget report, every message Teresa sent me about Natalie's schooling. I kept them all. Rachel plugged it in, scanning quickly. This is extensive. Dad's voice cracked. I told myself it was documentation. In truth, I was too afraid to confront her, so I just saved everything. Rachel looked up. Fear can't erase evidence. These will help. But what broke the case open didn't come from Dad. It came from Madison. She hesitated at my door that night, clutching a spiral-bound notebook. I found this, she said. It's my old diary from sophomore year. Mom used to talk about you all the time. I wrote some of it down because I didn't understand why she hated you so much. She flipped to a page, her small handwriting neat and heartbreakingly honest. Mom told me today that Natalie isn't really talented. She's just lucky. But I don't get it. Natalie works harder than anyone. I wish Mom would see that. She handed me the diary with both hands. You can use it, if it helps. My throat tightened. It does, I whispered. More than you know. Rachel took copies of everything. The discovery phase began. Slow, grueling, humiliating. Teresa's lawyers demanded every message I'd ever sent about her, every quote, every draft. They wanted to prove I'd orchestrated the article for attention. But truth leaves fingerprints. When Rachel presented the evidence, Dad's emails, the budget spreadsheets, Madison's diary, and old messages where Teresa had bragged about redirecting resources from that girl who'll never make it anyway, the courtroom went silent. Teresa sat across the aisle, face powdered, smile practiced. But when Madison's diary entry was read aloud, her expression cracked for the first time. Mom told me Natalie wasn't worth investing in, but I think she's wrong. Rachel's voice softened as she closed the book. Even children saw the truth. The defendant doesn't need to fabricate abuse. It was documented by her own stepmother's words. Teresa's attorney fidgeted. The judge leaned back, unimpressed. I've heard enough. When the gavel struck, it sounded like a door finally slamming shut. Case dismissed, with prejudice. Teresa's mouth opened like she might protest, but no words came out. Ethan put an arm around Madison. Dad exhaled for the first time in years. Outside the courthouse, cameras waited. Reporters shouted questions. I said only one thing. Truth doesn't need defending. It just needs time to surface. That night, I opened my mother's letter. Her handwriting was graceful, slanted, alive, even after death. My dearest girl, if you're reading this, I'm gone. But please know, you are not ordinary. The world will try to convince you otherwise. Don't let it. Brilliance isn't inherited. It's cultivated. It's chosen. You were always mine. In heart, in mind, in fire. Build something beautiful, even from ashes. Love, Mom. Tears blurred the words, but I read it again and again until the ink looked etched into me. That was the night I stopped surviving her story and started writing my own. The story should have ended with the lawsuit, but truth has a way of echoing long after the noise stops. Within a week, the court's decision went public. Local news outlets picked it up first, then regional, then national. The headlines were merciless. Stepfamily's lies exposed in STEM scandal. From disowned daughter to rising innovator, Natalie Keaton's real story. Teresa's name was everywhere, not as the successful university HR manager she'd tried to present herself as, but as the woman who spent years undermining a gifted child for no reason other than jealousy. Her book club friends stopped returning her calls. The university quietly asked her to resign. Dad didn't celebrate. He just sat at the kitchen table with the court order in front of him, staring at the embossed seal. I kept everything, he said, voice hollow, but not for the right reasons. I thought I was protecting myself. I was just keeping score. I put my hand over his. You kept the truth. That's what matters. He looked up, tears gathering. You shouldn't have needed me to. For a moment, the house felt unbearably small, full of years we couldn't get back. The phone wouldn't stop ringing. The university wanted me to speak at the Keaton Fellowship fundraiser, the same event my mother had once hosted. They wanted to celebrate 2 generations of innovation. I didn't want to go. I hated cameras now. I hated microphones, the way people leaned forward when I spoke, waiting for something redemptive. But Mom's letter sat on my desk. Build something beautiful, even from ashes. So I said yes. The night of the fundraiser, the auditorium smelled like new paint and old applause. A massive photo of my mother filled the backdrop. Lab coat, confident smile, eyes like twin beacons. The same photo that had changed my life. When they introduced me, polite clapping filled the room. I walked to the podium, palms slick, heartbeat thudding in my throat. I used to think genius was something you inherited, I began. That if you didn't have the right DNA, you were destined to be ordinary. The room went still. The room. I learned that idea from someone who called herself family, I continued, voice steady. Someone who told me I wasn't built for pressure, that I should aim lower, dream smaller. But I also learned something else, that people who fear your potential will do anything to bury it. I paused. Lights glinted off the microphone. My mother didn't believe in inherited genius. She believed in hidden genius, the kind buried under doubt, under circumstance, under other people's insecurities. She built this program so kids like me could find their wings. The silence deepened. Not absence of sound quiet, but the kind that means every word has landed. She used to say, I added, smiling faintly, brilliance appears in unexpected places, if we're willing to look. I think she was right. The applause started soft, then grew until it felt like thunder. But the most meaningful moment came afterward. A woman with silver hair approached me backstage. I was your mother's lab partner, she said. My name's Dr. Marjorie Lane. I've been waiting 15 years to meet you. She handed me a small sealed envelope, worn but perfectly preserved. She gave me this a week before she died, said to deliver it to you when you were ready. I froze. How did you know I was ready? I whispered. Dr. Lane smiled. Because you stopped surviving and started leading. When I got home, I sat at my desk, the new envelope beside Mom's old one. I didn't open it right away, just stared at the familiar looping handwriting, my brilliant girl written across the seal. The following morning, Dad found me asleep at my desk, the letter still unopened. He didn't ask to read it. He just made coffee and said, Your mom would have loved that speech. Would she? She'd have hated the attention, he said, smiling faintly. But she'd have been proud you used it to lift others. The doorbell rang mid-sentence. Ethan and Madison stood outside, backpacks slung over their shoulders. Madison smiled nervously. We saw the live stream. Ethan added, You were incredible. I stepped aside, waving them in. Over pancakes, Madison said quietly, I want to study psychology, to understand people like Mom, to stop that kind of damage before it starts. Ethan nodded. I'm starting a robotics mentorship club for kids who can't afford tech kits. I stared at them, two people who'd been taught to compete now learning to contribute. That's exactly what she'd want, I said. Madison looked at me. Can we visit her grave together? For a moment, I couldn't speak. I just nodded. Later that week, we went. The cemetery was quiet, spring wind stirring the grass, 3 sets of flowers, 3 sets of footprints in the soil. Madison placed a small paper crane beside the headstone. Ethan whispered, Thank you for her. I didn't cry. I just smiled, feeling the peace of something full circle. That night, I finally opened the new letter. Natalie, if you're reading this, it means you've found the truth. Not just about me, but about yourself. You were never meant to live in anyone's shadow. You were always meant to build light of your own. Legacy isn't about blood. It's about choice. About what we give back when no one's asking us to. Keep building. Keep believing. And when the world tells you you're ordinary, prove them wrong. Quietly, brilliantly, relentlessly. Love, Mom. I pressed the paper to my heart and whispered, I will. Teresa's silence didn't last. A week later, my lawyer forwarded a statement. My client wishes to apologize publicly to Ms. Keaton and her family for past remarks that have caused distress. She is seeking treatment for long-term mental health issues. No press conference, no video, just text. For the first time, she didn't need the attention. Dad read it twice, then folded it away. Closure, he said simply. Maybe, I replied. But not the kind that erases anything, the kind that makes room for what's next. And that's when I knew. What's next was mine to create. I didn't expect the letter to change me again, but some words rearrange your entire DNA the moment you read them. It was late, that hour when silence hums louder than noise. My lamp was the only light in the room, and my mother's second letter trembled slightly in my hands. She'd written it 15 years ago, a week before the accident that took her life. Her handwriting was strong, steady, the opposite of the woman Teresa had described. My dearest Natalie, if this finds you, it means I didn't get the chance to tell you in person how extraordinary you are. I have watched you solve puzzles that stump grown scientists. You think slowly, carefully, beautifully, the way discovery demands. If the world ever tries to tell you that your light is too dim, remember, Small lights still shatter darkness. You don't owe anyone humility for being brilliant. My throat burned. I blinked hard, forcing the words into focus. And if someone tries to make you forget me, don't hate them. People fear what reminds them of their own failures. Build bridges anyway, because brilliance doesn't belong to one person. It belongs to everyone we lift as we climb. Her last sentence felt like a hand on my shoulder. Be the bridge, Natalie. I read it 3 more times before sliding it back into its envelope, heart pounding like it had when I opened my acceptance letter all those years ago. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window watching the city lights blink like Morse code, each one a reminder that my mother's words had outlived her. By morning, I'd made a decision. The Keaton Fellowship Office. The following week, I stood in front of the university board. The walls were lined with framed portraits. Founders, donors, professors, but only one woman, my mother. I don't want the fellowship named just after her anymore, I said. I want it to stand for what she built. The idea that brilliance hides everywhere, not just in kids with resources. The program director frowned slightly. Are you suggesting a rebrand? I nodded. A new scholarship, the Evelyn Keaton Award for Hidden Genius, annual, for students who were underestimated, kids like me. There was a pause, then he smiled. You're your mother's daughter. 1 month later, the new award launched with quiet ceremony. No flashing cameras, no speeches rehearsed to perfection, just a small group of students, each holding an envelope with their name printed in silver. The first recipient was a shy girl named Isabella Tran, 14, from a rural school with no science lab. Her essay talked about building solar-powered flashlights from broken calculators. When I handed her the award, she whispered, "My mom says I'm lucky to be here. She thinks this program is for kids who need help." It was like hearing an echo of my own past. I crouched to her level and said, "Your mom's wrong. This isn't help, it's recognition. You're here because you earned it." Her eyes filled with tears, and I saw the reflection of a younger me staring back. I smiled. "You belong here, Isabella. Never let anyone tell you otherwise." That night, I couldn't stop thinking about her, or about all the kids who'd been told they weren't enough. The idea took root. Adam and I were sitting in my living room a week later, surrounded by takeout boxes and old robotics manuals. "You're thinking about something," he said, watching me. I nodded. "What if I take this further? Not just a scholarship, a mentorship network. Scientists, engineers, teachers guiding kids who've been overlooked." He grinned. "Hidden genius. The mentorship edition." "Exactly," I said. "We'll call it the Bridge Initiative, after my mom's words." He leaned back, smiling. "I'll help you build it." And he did. Within 6 months, we had volunteers from across the country. University students mentoring high schoolers, researchers hosting workshops in small towns. By the end of the first year, the Bridge Initiative had served over 100 kids. Every time I walked into a new workshop and saw another student light up as they solved something hard for the first time, I thought of my mother's letter. She'd told me to build bridges, and I finally understood I was one. Months later, Dad came to visit the new headquarters, a renovated wing of the Keaton building now filled with laughter, robotics kits, and half-eaten pizza boxes. He stood in the doorway, hands trembling slightly. "She'd be proud," he said. "I know," I whispered, "but she'd tell me not to stop here." He smiled, eyes damp. "You sound just like her." I grinned. I take that as the highest compliment. Before he left, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small box. Inside was my mother's old keycard, laminated and worn. "She carried this every day," he said softly. "Now it's yours." I traced the faded photo on the ID badge. My mother smiling, younger than I remembered. It hit me that I wasn't chasing her legacy anymore. I was expanding it. That night, as I turned off the lights in the lab, the sign over the door caught my eye. The Bridge Initiative, founded by Natalie Keaton, inspired by Dr. Evelyn Keaton. For the first time in my life, I felt no shadow behind my name, only light. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday. Emails, meetings, lunch at my desk. A normal day, until my phone buzzed with a number I hadn't seen in years. Teresa Colburn. For a moment, I just stared at the name. Part of me wanted to delete it, to pretend I hadn't seen it. But curiosity, that old reckless part of me that wanted closure, pressed answer. Her voice was smaller than I remembered. "Natalie?" I said nothing. The silence stretched. "I heard about the mentorship program," she said. "The Bridge Initiative. You're doing something good." I kept my tone even. "What do you want, Teresa?" She hesitated, then softly, painfully, to apologize. I almost laughed. Not out of cruelty, just disbelief. You spent 15 years trying to make me feel like I was nothing. You lied about my mother. You sued me. And now you want forgiveness? I know, she said quickly, and you have every right to hate me, but I need you to know, I see it now. All of it. I see what I did. Her voice cracked. When your father married me, I thought I could fill a hole. I thought I could become someone important. But your mother, she was still everywhere. In the way people spoke about her, in your eyes, in your mind. I couldn't compete with that. So I tore you down because I couldn't lift myself up. I closed my eyes. For years, I had dreamed of hearing her admit that. And now that she had, it didn't feel like victory. It felt like exhaustion. I'm in therapy, she continued. I've been trying to understand why I became that person. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I needed to tell you I was wrong. I waited until the silence between us was heavy enough to break cleanly. Then I said, I believe you, that you're sorry, but I don't forgive you. I've already moved past you, Teresa. You don't live in my head anymore. She made a small sound, maybe a sob, maybe relief. I guess that's something, she whispered. It's everything, I said, and ended the call. The next week, Dad came by for dinner, Madison brought her boyfriend, and Ethan showed up late, covered in sawdust from a robotics workshop. We ate spaghetti around my small kitchen table, laughter spilling over the edges. At one point, Madison looked up and said quietly, Mom called me too. I froze. What did she say? The same thing, she said. Apologies, regrets. I told her I didn't hate her, but I can't have her in my life right now. Ethan nodded. She called me too. I didn't answer. We sat there in that fragile peace, bound not by shared blood, but shared healing. Dad lifted his glass. To starting over, properly this time. We clinked glasses, and for once, no one corrected the phrasing. Months later, the Bridge Initiative grew faster than any of us imagined. 10 states, hundreds of mentors, thousands of students, the kind of scale my mother could only dream of. At one of our workshops, a student asked, Ms. Keaton, did your mom ever tell you what inspired her to start all this? I smiled. She believed that brilliance doesn't come from privilege. It comes from curiosity. And curiosity needs opportunity. The student nodded thoughtfully. So, we're her opportunity? No, I said. You're her proof. That night, I checked our program's inbox. Hundreds of messages. One caught my eye. From Ethan Keaton. Subject, idea for expansion. He'd written, thinking we could build a separate branch for foster youth. Kids who've been told their circumstances define them. I already found 2 sponsors. Let's call it Reach Forward. You in? I smiled so hard my cheeks hurt. Always, I replied. A year later. Dad stood beside me at the unveiling of the new Keaton Science Center. He looked older but lighter somehow. Like forgiveness had shaved years off his shoulders. During his speech, he said, When my wife died, I let grief turn into cowardice. I thought silence would protect my family, but silence only protects the wrong people. I can't change the past, but I can help other fathers choose courage over comfort. The applause was quiet, but heartfelt. Madison cried. Ethan looked proud. When it was my turn to speak, I didn't prepare notes. I just looked at the students in the front rows. Some in donated lab coats 2 sizes too big, all of them looking at the world the way I once did, like it could still surprise them. My mother built a bridge she never got to cross, I said, but I'm crossing it now and building more on the other side. That night, Adam and I sat on the steps outside the new building. He handed me a coffee. You ever stop to think about what your mom started? All the time, I said. But it's not just hers anymore. It's ours now. All of us who refuse to stay ordinary. He smiled. She'd say you finally became unapologetically brilliant. I laughed. Maybe, but I think she'd say I just learned how to share the light. The stars were out, the air crisp, and for the first time, everything felt whole. 5 years later, I stood on a stage beneath a banner that read, The Bridge Initiative National Summit, celebrating 10,000 students strong. 10,000. 10,000 minds that might have gone unnoticed if not for the program that began with 1 forgotten letter, 1 hidden photograph, and 1 woman's belief that brilliance could bloom anywhere. As the applause faded, I looked out at the crowd, mentors, students, alumni, and saw stories instead of faces. A girl from a reservation who built wind turbines from scrap metal. A boy from foster care who coded an app to reunite lost pets with their owners. A teenager from a refugee camp now designing clean water systems for her hometown. All of them standing where I once stood, nervous, brilliant, underestimated. I took a deep breath. This, I said into the mic, is what happens when someone chooses to believe in potential instead of pedigree. The audience hushed. Brilliance doesn't come from DNA. It comes from courage. The courage to stay curious, to defy the labels someone else hands you, to build something beautiful out of doubt. The applause that followed shook the floor. But I wasn't thinking about them. I was thinking about her. My mother, Dr. Evelyn Keaton. After the summit, Dad met me backstage, his tie crooked, eyes shining. "You did it," he said simply. "We did it," I corrected, smiling. He chuckled. "Your mom would have loved the speech." "I think she heard it," I said. He nodded, then handed me a folded newspaper clipping, yellowed, creased. "She kept this in her lab coat," he said. It was an old headline, "Local researcher launches program for hidden talents." Underneath, her quote, "Genius is not rare, recognition is." The simplicity of it hit me harder than anything I'd read in years. Later that night, I visited her grave, the summit badge still around my neck. Fresh flowers in hand, same quiet breeze that always seemed to find this place. "I did it, Mom," I whispered. "We did it. The bridges you dreamed of, they're everywhere now." I placed the clipping on the stone, weighed it down with a small rock, and smiled. "Your words saved me," I said softly. So I passed them on. The wind stirred, lifting the edge of the newspaper like a wave goodbye. 2 weeks later, we held our annual awards ceremony. The newest recipient was a 15-year-old boy named Marcus Lee from the foster system. When he walked on stage, shoulders tense, eyes uncertain, I recognized the look. Half hope, half defense. I handed him the award and leaned close. "You belong here," I said. He blinked fast. "My foster mom says I should just be grateful, that this program's for kids who need help." I smiled gently. "She's wrong. You're here because you earned it, because someone saw your brilliance and made sure the world did too." He nodded, tears slipping down his face. "You really think I can do this?" "I don't think," I said. "I know." He grinned then, that fragile, luminous grin I'd once worn myself. Weeks later, I got an email from Marcus. He'd built a prototype for a low-cost air filter made from recycled bottles. It worked. His message ended with, "I just wanted to thank you for seeing me. I think I finally see myself too." I stared at the screen for a long time. That was it. That was the point. Legacy wasn't a building, or a plaque, or a scholarship fund. It was this, the chain of recognition, passed from one believer to the next. My mother had built a bridge to reach me. I had built thousands more. And those who crossed would keep building their own. Because that's how brilliance works. It multiplies when shared. Final scene. The sun was setting when I locked up the lab that night. Through the window, the city lights flickered on. Scattered stars reflected on glass. I traced my mother's old keycard, now framed by the door, her photo faded but still radiant. "Thank you," I whispered, "for seeing me, for teaching me to look for others." A gust of wind rustled the papers on my desk, flipping open a notebook to one of the program's mottos, scrawled in marker. "Brilliance appears in unexpected places, if we're willing to look." I turned off the lights and stepped outside. Behind me, the lab glowed faintly, the way memories do when they've finally made peace with the present. The night air was cool, the world wide open. And as I walked home, I thought of every mind yet to be found, every spark waiting under the dust of someone else's doubt, and smiled. Because I knew now, with absolute certainty, brilliance isn't genetic, it's chosen. It's nurtured, it's passed on, bridge by bridge, heart by heart,